This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Vast Data and Carasoft. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, the User Experience Initiative that aims to change how the Pentagon works. Government trades AI use cases with the private sector, and 2024's top 5 for the Defense Intelligence Agency. Welcome to FedGov Today with Francis Rose. The Chief Information Officer of the Defense Department, John Sherman, is launching a new user experience initiative across the department. It's part of the response to the Fix Our Computers complaints from DoD employees. At DoDIIS 2023, I asked John Sherman how the initiative will work and what he wants to accomplish.
It's really inspired by what we've done on Zero Trust, where we're leading at the department level, but really leveraging what the services and others are doing. So we're standing up, it's small right now, a user experience portfolio management office. We have a new hire, Mr. Seven Kong, who used to be in Defense Digital Services, tons of industry experience. He's a great leader. He's a highly qualified expert. That's how we brought him in. He's going to be leading this, working with Ms. Lily Zalecki and her team there as we look at things like tech refresh. And by the way, I'm going to be in the near future issuing some tech refresh guidance to the department. And this goes back to what the Defense Business Board said in the January-February timeframe. And yeah, this does get linked back to the Fix Our Computers, but it's more than that too. It's what are we substantially going to do in investments, in standards, and building on momentum that's already underway. And I do think often about the women and men at the pointy end of things having maybe hardware that's too old. And it's not just stuff at the endpoint, it's routers, switches, things in the walls, on-base transport. That's what we're going to start working here, ultimately with the continuing goal of making sure they can get their mission done with world-class IT. And also, Francis, I'd add, it's not just about mission, it's also about morale, retention. They are part of a world-class military and they need world-class IT to get their job done.
How much of this initiative is new and how much of it is codifying or consolidating or configuring things that you and the services are already doing?
It's a combination of both. And as with anything, for example, defense business systems, which is we're working on here, there's a lot of momentum going on here. So we're not going to come down from OSD and suddenly say, here's everything that needs to happen. We're building on what's going on here. But to be able to have some common standards and the common vision and direction, kind of like what I did with the JWCC memo several months ago to give us a North Star on that, that's what we're going to get after here. And really elevating best practices. I think about what the Department of Air Force has done under Colt Weidel, and he's one of our consultants on some of this. We still got him on a little bit of a tether there to be able to help us with this. So we're not reinventing what Colt had to work with Lauren when she was a CIO there and what Venus is continuing. So that's what we're doing here, a little bit of combination of both, but to continue, this is going to take some time. We had robust investments in this area in 23 and in the 24 budget, which is down on the Hill. Being able to get this, and we're looking forward on this as well, it's both money as well as standards and just an emphasis at the CIO level.
You went exactly where I wanted to go, which is what will you need to do, I imagine in conjunction with Mike McCord, the CFO, to get yourself the resources that you need to execute on.
So it's resources and also tethered to the goals. We have the planning guidance I issue at the beginning of the year, and UX, et cetera, tech refresh is in there already. But it's also, user experience can be kind of a broad, and tech debt can be a broad sort of term here. And so we need to make sure that it's truly what we need to get after here. I don't want to over-constrain the DoD components, but we also don't want this to be so broad that investments can go against any number of things that aren't necessarily improving that sailor, guardian, or Marine, or other service members' experience at her or his installation.
You mentioned JWCC. And Sharon Woods gave us a really good download on that on FedGov Today recently. She talked a little bit about edge computing, and you described here the Joint Operational Edge Cloud. Define that and what that means to the serviceman or woman at the edge of the spear, and also to the technology team inside the building.
So what we've really discovered, I'd almost call it cloud tradecraft, as we're implementing JWCC at massive scale here. If you look from the continental United States, CONUS, where we are right now, out to the tactical edge, think the Western Pacific, as my friend, the former NSA CIO, Greg Smithberger, would say, the speed of light matters. And so as we look at the backhaul and so on, we need cloud capability at the kind of interim points. Think Hawaii, maybe Guam, elsewhere, that is between the continental United States and that tactical edge device. We have our JWCC companies here out on the floor, and probably some of their devices are out here. We need that capability so we don't have to come all the way back to CONUS. We can instead maybe go back to Hickam or somewhere else or on allied territory, perhaps Australia and elsewhere. This is something we've discovered here as a way to be able to do cloud computing for combat tactical edge uses. This is not only for the Indo-PACOM region as well, also could be EUCOM. I just met with the AFRICOM J6 recently of what they might need on their AOR there. And so we're learning how to do this, and it's underway. And so it's called the Joe Cloud, Joint Operational Edge. I think of a cup of Joe. Maybe that'll be the symbol on that. But that's what we call it. And it's whether you call it a lily pad or an interim capability, that's what we're doing with that.
Is that interim capability, if that's what you define it as, then the next step toward the vision, for example, in JADC2, where edge device can communicate directly with edge device?
And absolutely. And when I said interim, I need to make sure I'm being clear on this. I don't mean interim temporally. I mean interim in a stepping stone in distance. Absolutely. As we're supporting CJAD, C2, and what's going on, for example, with Admiral Aquilino's efforts out at Indo-PACOM, being able to have that robust, it's really almost a trinity of capabilities with compute at the edge, transport, whether terrestrial, space-based, et cetera, HF, and then the cybersecurity. This is that compute piece of the trinity that we're putting in place.
You also talked here about a software-defined enterprise moving toward that vision, and you and I have discussed that before. Right. And I note there are more than 50 software factories across the United States inside the Department of Defense. How are they communicating with each other, and what's your role in the Office of the DoD CIO to be kind of a clearinghouse or connective tissue among those software factories?
So really, not having too heavy of a hand on this. There's so much innovation going on. Many of these software factories are linked to specific programs within the services, but also we don't want too much of a Wild West where someone's having to reinvent something between the different factories. One thing too, for example, Army Software Factory does bring everyone together down in Austin to exchange best practices and so on. So Rob Dietmar, our Chief Software Officer, working with Lily Zalecki and others, we really have good governance here at different echelons to bring the different players together. But I'll be honest, Francis, I don't know if there's a perfect answer in terms of the right number of factories, but what I do want to get after is moving away from a hardware-defined enterprise and what the Ukrainians have shown us, where they have 300,000 people, they will say, doing immediate DevSecOps, responding to the Russian threat, not just modifying software, but writing software to be able to go into weapon systems, drones, electronic warfare capabilities. That's what we're going to have to do at really fast speeds here. So the services are moving out on this, but this is an area we're going to keep our foot on the gas with.
To fulfill that vision, what do you need infrastructure-wise, and what do you need personnel-wise to be qualified to do the things that you just described?
So the infrastructure is both going to be what we're doing at JWCC, which provides that capability, moving towards a containerized Kubernetes sort of container structure to be able to do this with the lessons learned we've already seen in the services. But the talent is so key, and that gets to what Mark Gorak and Patrick Johnson and the Workforce Innovation Director are doing this past year here. We've done the Workforce Strategy, Implementation Plan, and 8140 Policy Series. And that sounds a little government-esque, but God, is that important to be able to have the work roles right, to have the incentive structure right with cyber accepted service, targeted local management supplement, to get the women and men we need in those very precise work roles to do DevSecOps at scale, to be able to do the cybersecurity and to be able to do the things, for example, working with Craig Martell and CDAO on generative AI and so on. And that kind of pick and shovel behind the scenes work is so critical to getting the talent piece right.
We just have a couple of minutes left, John. I appreciate your time today. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Zero Trust. When you were on FedGov Today the last time, you were very passionate about what that team is doing there. Where does your Zero Trust effort stand, and where's it going?
So where we're at, Randy Resnick, our portfolio management lead, is getting and has gotten the implementation plans in from the DoD components, the services, the commands, the DAFAs, defense agencies and field activities, and we're looking pretty good. The 91 capabilities he laid out in the strategy to get after targeted Zero Trust by 2027, we're looking pretty good overall. Now, as you can imagine, on something this scale, there's a little bit of back and forth, but I would say I'd give us a pretty darn good grade, and I will be reporting reporting to Congress here in the month of January as we get together per the NDAA, and to be able to provide that up to them where we are. Again, there's going to be, as we implement DISA's Project Thunderdome, which is an important capability, how does that fit together in all this? It's a lot of gears fitting together, but I'll tell you, Francis, Zero Trust has been, as we talked about previously on the show, has been this thing out in the ether. We're getting after it. We're determined by 2027 to have targeted Zero Trust, and I'm confident we're on the right path.
You can read more about the DoD User Experience Initiative and the Department's Zero Trust efforts on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, government trades AI use cases with the private sector. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. Join leaders from all across the intelligence community for a unique look inside the future of technology. Innovation in Government from DoDIIS, Tuesday night, January 9th at 8:30 on WJLA 24/7 News and the FedGov Today YouTube channel. Welcome back. The Government Accountability Office finds more than 1,200 use cases for artificial intelligence among the 20 civilian agencies it surveyed. You can learn more about GAO's AI research on this week's FedGov Today podcast. At DoDIIS 2023, Randy Hayes, Vice President for Public Sector at Vast Data, told me about the similarities and differences between government use cases and the private sector.
From an AI perspective, the things that are driving the commercial side of these large language models, right? So this is like, very a hot topic. And if you look at the companies that are driving this, you have companies like OpenAI and Anthropic. These are kind of companies that have doubled their valuation over the last year, where it's been really hard to drive that type of market adoption. So these are the guys that are actually building the large language models. Underneath of that, you then have these kind of new breed of AI clouds that are being built specifically just for these large language models. So companies like CoreWeave and G42. And then underneath that, you have companies that are building compute and GPUs for this, like NVIDIA. And then you have data platform companies like Vast that are building, the back-end architecture for this. And if you think about AI, the most important thing with AI is data. And having fast access to all of your data is really where things happen, and from multiple geographic locations as well. You have to draw from all the IoT and all those type of architectures. And so the large language models are nice. How that relates then back to the federal government, there's a slew of things that have to be automated that we just don't have enough people. And if you look at like this community, we just don't have enough people to protect the homeland, right? And so whether it's intrusion detection from a cyber analytics perspective, and the amount of attacks that we're getting on all of our networks, all of our critical infrastructure is happening every second of every day, like till the end of time. And so we have to automate and use artificial intelligence and machine learning in order to get ourselves a tactical advantage against our adversaries. And so those are some of the things that we're seeing. We're also seeing a lot of digital twin work where, people are looking at trying to look at we have this Apache helicopter, and we want to know when the most likely time that this is going to, a component's going to fail, so that we can have, be ready in order to fix these things as fast as possible. And so you see that. We see a lot of digital twins for mission planning. So if you can take satellite imagery and build 3D models out of it, and you can have our the folks in the field, the operators that are doing these missions, and they can run through this virtually, and they know where they have to exfil from and all the little details, and they can train virtually. Then when they get there, they know they've seen it already, and they can see kind of where they're going. So there's definitely some really interesting capabilities that are coming from the commercial into federal, and we're seeing a ton of it. And so I think when you really look at, we're at the infancy of artificial intelligence. The commercial sector typically runs a little bit faster than federal. I think this is kind of a known thing, right? But there's a lot of really interesting prototypes that are going on. And so I see really big things for AI and machine learning inside of the federal government over the next, let's call it, 3 to 5 years, as all of these technologies mature. But to the same notion as the workforce matures on the federal side as well. And so there's a lot of agencies that are doing some really, really interesting stuff, whether it's healthcare, places like NIH, doing all kinds of great work from National Cancer Institute to Center for Information Technology inside of NIH. Like, these people are just doing fantastic healthcare work. And a lot of that is AI related, right? And so again, if you could pull doctors out of the path of looking at MRIs or CT scans or whatever, like, you can train machines to do this work, and it just makes a better society, really. And so, yeah,
we have less than a minute left. Where would you tell, what sectors of the commercial world would you tell government leaders to look at? Financial services, you mentioned healthcare and others. Are there particular sectors that are doing things that are applicable, especially to what people do in the government?
I think so. I think certainly from a financial perspective, we have a lot of high frequency trading firms, and like, we need some people to keep an eye on these folks, right? And so we need the government to be running at the same pace that these commercial companies do. So yeah, I think on the finance side for sure. Certainly from the healthcare perspective, looking at the different pharma organizations and relating that back to FDA. I think DOE is very much at the forefront of a lot of this, of trying to make sustainable energy and things of this nature. And candidly, there's a lot of companies out there that are building these technologies kind of outside of the traditional federal systems integrator. And so having those people, looking at people that are building components, whether it's somebody like a Boeing or a Lockheed or somebody that's building planes and things like this, I think a lot of that really rolls back into the federal government in a couple different ways.
You can read more about AI in government on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, 2024's top 5 for the Defense Intelligence Agency. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. Join leaders from all across the intelligence community for a unique look inside the future of technology. Innovation in Government from DoDIIS, Tuesday night, January 9th at 8:30 on WJLA 24/7 News and the FedGov Today YouTube channel. Welcome back. 5 priorities will drive the action from the CIO office at the Defense Intelligence Agency in 2024. Doug Casa, the DIA CIO, rolled them out at DoDIIS 2023. I asked him there what the 5 priorities are and how he'll execute on them.
Current crises have definitely focused DIA CIO and the operations we provide to our customers all over the world, particularly on the top secret fabric. One of those priorities, which we've talked about in the past, is Jaywick, so the Joint Worldwide Intelligence Communication System. That's essentially the top secret network for not just the IC and the Department of Defense, but really the whole federal government. So as part of that, one of the driving requirements that we've had, especially as part of our defense operations, is connectivity anywhere in the world. So as we've gone through current events, having a deployable Jaywick kit anywhere in the world has really been a driving requirement, especially in terms of the reliability. So it's getting to areas of the world which we don't traditionally operate and have connectivity, and then being able to have that top secret fabric under any circumstance, whether it's a degraded environment, meaning we are working in a place that doesn't have stable communications, to a completely disconnected environment where we have to be able to do all of those defense and intelligence functions from one place, disconnected from everything else. And a lot of that is not just connectivity, but it's having the data you need to be able to make those decisions. Traditionally, we've operated from a data center model, which is we have data centers all over the world that we pull data from. The challenge that we've had is how do we bring all of that data and all that connectivity in one place to be able to function efficiently? And that's been the focus of our Jaywick's modernization program. The second priority area is what we call DoDIIS, the DoD Intelligence Information System. We're at the DoDIIS conference. I've actually heard a lot of questions of what is DoDIIS. DoDIIS is all 3 network fabrics, NIPR, SIPR, the secret side, and Jaywick's, all working together as one system. That's what DoDIIS is. And from a user perspective, that's a desktop environment, an integrated desktop environment to where you can get to all your data, all your applications, such as email, chat, etc., from one place, working in a single environment that's fully integrated. DIA and NGA partner on that. It's what we call a desktop environment, DTE. We've since extended that out to more than 70,000 customers across the federal government that need top secret connectivity. In this day and age, IT is expensive. It requires specialized expertise. A lot of agencies don't have that expertise in-house, so they're working through DIA and NGA to provide that. Another priority area, which really came up during the COVID pandemic, was how can we be able to operate more efficiently at home? So a lot of our software development moved over to the unclassified fabric. As part of that, we needed to create a capability delivery pipeline, as we call it. It's really our DevOps platform, to where you can develop applications infrastructure, deploy it in an environment that looks like the secret and top secret fabric, and actually have it work and be able to move out. And that's been a big investment from DIA over the past couple of years since COVID. We talked a lot about international systems during this conference. So with our Five Eye partners in particular, if anything that recent crises have shown, whether it's Russia-Ukraine or the Hamas-Israel conflict, our partnerships with those across the Five Eye have been absolutely essential. And as we head into what's known as strategic competition, so those threats from China, those partnerships become even more important. So the amount of information we're sharing, the type of information we're sharing becomes more complex. And DIA is a service provider on behalf of the intelligence community for providing international connectivity. We run something called Stone Ghost externally as a service, and then internally within the agency, very much related to our desktop environment, we do that for our Five Eye integrees. So those that are essentially Five Eye employees within DIA that operate in a common desktop so we can seamlessly share information. Those are the top 4 technical priorities that I have. The wrapper around all of that, of course, is people. How do we bring in the right skills and retain the right skills? And in addition to that, it's also how do we provide accommodations? We talked a lot about on the ICCIO panel just a few minutes ago, 508. So Section 508 is the Rehabilitation Act for providing technologies for those with disabilities that need assistance in the workplace. DIA has taken a lead in that, providing anything from technologies that support those that are vision impaired to those that are deaf or hard of hearing. How do we bring that into the workplace for them to also work seamlessly across all fabrics and with all of our partners? We take a lot of that for granted, but in a SCIF, those technologies aren't as readily available. They rely on wireless communications in some instances, like hearing aids or pacemakers, or calling externally to those that are not cleared, right? So our deaf and hard of hearing employees require access to an interpretation service, a signing service that is not within the SCIF with them. So we had to develop and really come up with some innovative capabilities to make that interaction take place within the environment and really make their workplace more efficient as a whole.
I'd love to dig into all 5 of those, Doug, but 2 in particular I want to focus on in the time that we have left. Regarding Jaywick, a lot of the things that you talked about that are similar to what John Sherman laid out earlier in the day about the DoD more broadly. How much of what you're doing with Jaywick is similar to or in common with what's happening at the enterprise-wide level in DoD, and how much of it is peculiar to because of the application, the mission in the intelligence area, or something else?
So it's directly related. So we partner with DISA on the wide area network that we run for Jaywick, and they really have the lead for SIPRNet on the secret side. A lot of that same transport, the same circuits we rely on each other, right? So DIA operates a network on behalf of the intelligence community, DISA does it on behalf of the DoD. That's a partnership as we have moving forward, especially as we move forward into the cloud space, to create a separate and unique infrastructure for both fabrics and for the agencies using it between the intelligence community and the DoD. Just 1, isn't efficient, and 2, it's not cost realistic. So the partnership is actually key with DoD CIO and DISA as we move forward into the future. In terms of the integration as well of that data, right? At the end of the day, we're all solving the same problems. We're operating in the same world, solving the same conflicts, operating under the same operational constraints. And that partnership has really been key with DoD CIO and DISA for how we do that more efficiently and leverage each other's experiences and best of breed capabilities.
You've been in this space long enough to know, though, that that's not always been the way that the department and the building has operated with that level of awareness of what the other guy or person is doing. What's brought that on, and what perpetuates that in your view? What do you and your colleagues need to do across the department to make sure that perpetuates itself?
So I'm going to give credit to both Honorable Sherman and Dr. Merritt on the ICCIO Council side. Both of them have worked in both areas, right, across the IC and DoD. And bringing together that joint CIO council is something that we haven't done until more recently, right? So we're actually putting out the same functional needs together and then coming up with those solutions together, rather than doing it in isolation and then trying to make those capabilities, those technologies integrate. Integration comes at design. Once something is in operations, it's impossible to integrate it. And so through Dr. Merritt and Honorable Sherman, we've been able to have those conversations and actually design things from the beginning. Cloud is a perfect example of that, especially as we move into the top secret area and the secret network. Having a joint plan for how we migrate our applications, our data, and workflow into the cloud and using a shared infrastructure has really been key. Because in the past, you're right, it's been two separate strategies, and as a result, two different efforts.
And even, I would argue, fractionalized within those two sides of it as well. You used a term in your fifth priority that I thought was interesting. You called it workforce experience. What does an ideal workforce experience look like in your view?
So I joke that we do a great job when folks leave an organization, right? So we throw parties, we read them out of their accounts quickly. I want to move that to the left. So workforce experience is not just about keeping people, right, and celebrating them staying with an organization. It's improving our recruitment of new individuals into the intelligence community, into DoD, and more specifically DIA. So a couple of things that we've stood up. One is neurodiverse recruiting. So we've partnered with some local area institutions to actually expand our recruitment outside of the traditional, college experience where we go visit college campuses. We've done the same thing for those institutions that support individuals with disabilities, so partnering to really recruit a more diverse workforce. In addition to that, we've done high school recruiting. This is something that has been newer in the IC and DoD, to where not only are we just looking to target individuals with unique experiences out of high school who may not be planning to go on to college, but actually even getting earlier, like in the freshman year, of having more participation in the classroom, helping to design and develop criteria or curriculum with educational institutions so we can actually get our needs injected in there as well, and then create a path for those students as they go throughout high school and college, and then know what to expect as they get into the workplace. That's something, that's definitely been a mindset shift over the years of really moving that recruiting to the left. And as a result, it's really helped us adopt harder to find skills than we've traditionally been able to do in the past.
You can read more about Doug's priorities for DIA on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in just a moment. Join leaders from all across the intelligence community for a unique look inside the future of technology. Innovation in Government from DoDIIS, Tuesday night, January 9th at 8:30 on WJLA 24/7 News and the FedGov Today YouTube channel. Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, you heard a moment ago about Innovation in Government DoDIIS presented by Carasoft. It's coming January 9th at 8:30 p.m. on WJLA 24/7 News. You'll see all new interviews with leaders from DIA, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, SOCOM, and more. You can learn more about the show and see a full guest list at innovationingov.com. FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10:30. Thanks very much for watching. Have a great week.